How did life begin on Earth? How on Earth did life emerge? People have been pondering this question for centuries. I want to share an experiment with you that might, just might, offer a blueprint for how life got started. This molecule here needs no introduction. The DNA stores information and it is one of the pillars of life. However, in modern cells, it would be useless without a single-stranded cousin called RNA. RNA reads that information and carries it to the ribosomes where proteins get built. RNA differs only by one type of nucleobase from a single strand of DNA. The RNA molecule probably existed long before the DNA helix developed. It can also store and transmit genetic information. I will model such a single RNA strand with a tape of cells. Each cell holds a number from 0 to 255. These numbers represent different genes. In our toy world, we only need 4 nucleobases to form one gene, since 4 to the power of 4 is 256. Different genes correspond to different arrangements of these 4 nucleobases. In the postulated RNA world, these molecules interact with enzymes in the environment. We will treat such a tape as a program that makes its environment do something. In our model, we will be able to simulate how a soup of random tapes turns into order, and how tapes that can replicate themselves take over the soup and reproduce until all resources are exhausted. As soon as replicators are created by chance, their number will explode. So the change from chaos to order happens almost instantly, like a phase transition. The ideas behind this presentation were found and published by Blaise Agüera y Arcas and his colleagues. You can find the link to their publication and a link to one of his talks in the video description. To get everyone on the same page, we introduce a tiny programming language. It only has a handful of commands and they take only a minute to explain. We will simply call this language BF to not get in trouble with YouTube's community guidelines. These comments are represented by symbols, and we assume that the program acts on a tape like our RNA model. Every programming language gets introduced with a Hello World example. So let's see what this looks like in BF. We start with the plus and minus commands that increase or decrease the value at the current tape position. Furthermore, less than and greater than shift the cursor to the left or right. A dot prints the current value on the screen. Let's see these symbols in action to create the word hello. For simplicity's sake, we use an obvious correspondence between numbers and letters. When the tape starts off with only zeros, the 8 pluses generate the letter H in the first cell, and the dot prints it on the screen. To save keystrokes, the value of the next cell is raised 5 times to print the letter E, before the cursor returns to the first cell and finishes there with the L's and the O. We can make the program look fancier by introducing 2 more commands that create a loop. Opening and closing brackets mark a section of the program that gets repeated as long as the number at the current tape position is larger than 0. We don't have to count pluses up to 8 now, we can just multiply 4 by 2. It doesn't make the program any shorter, but it does make the language Turing complete, which means anything that can be computed at all can in principle be computed in BF. Let's summarize all 8 commands of this bizarre language. Plus and minus change the value of a cell. Less than and greater than move the position of the cursor back and forth. Brackets surround a looping part of the program. A dot prints to the display. And there's one more command that does the opposite of the dot. It takes a number from the outside and writes it into the current cell. So far, this looks a bit like a punch card computer. The computer reads the program from the outside and performs some operations on its memory. Next, we make a few changes to this setup. Most importantly, we get rid of our program input and display output. The program is read directly from the RNA tape, and the output is also directly written onto the tape. Instead of a display, we introduce a second arrow. This arrow is moved by curly braces. The dot command no longer writes to the display, but to the second arrow instead. Similarly, a comma copies from the second arrow to the first. All other commands keep their meaning. Another important change is that the commands themselves are encoded as genes or numbers in our model. On the screen you can see the adjusted code table. Of these 256 possible genes, only 10 do anything interesting for us at all. What you see on the screen is a Turing machine, and the RNA tape is its memory. The mathematician von Neumann came up with the architectural idea that a computer's memory should hold data and program in the same place. We have created an environment where the RNA gets read, and reading it changes the RNA. Remember the RNA world idea, the primordial soup that holds three important things: RNA molecules, enzymes, and lipids. Those enzymes interact with the RNA molecule deterministically. Finally, lipids can build containers that form physical structures. Such a bath of RNA tapes, enzymes, and lipids might be crudely modeled by a Turing machine as shown here. Now it's time to run the experiment. We prepare our soup with about 4,000 RNA tapes, each more than 60 cells long, and each equipped with a random sequence of nucleobases, leading to a random distribution of numbers between 0 and 255. 2 tapes picked at random are stuck end to end and run. And keep in mind that only 10 of these 256 numbers actually do anything. After a while, the 2 tapes are separated again and returned to the soup. In the animation you can watch a few of these tapes over time. In one epoch, all tapes get paired up at random and are evaluated once. At the start, only small changes occur. This is kind of obvious, since the genes that cause changes are rare among all the other genes. But then comes the moment that hit me like a bolt of lightning the first time I saw it. All of a sudden, the chaos in the soup gets replaced by almost complete order. For this particular setup, the transition takes place after roughly 8,600 epochs. Let's have a closer look at the processes around the time in slow motion. You probably raise your eyebrows at this point and suspect some fine-tuning of the initial setup. But you are invited to convince yourself that the experiment is not just a coincidence. A similar behavior occurs for a wide range of initial conditions, and you can test it yourself. A friend of mine prepared a computational life reactor where you can create primordial soups according to your own desire. You can choose the number of tapes, the length of each tape, and the initial distribution of numbers. Then you can start the experiment and lean back and watch what's happening. Look at this transition, isn't it amazing? Unfortunately, it goes back to chaos after a while. We can choose a larger soup and wait a bit longer. There are a few more parameters that can influence the transition. A mutation rate that randomly changes the genes of the tape is helpful but not necessary. Look at this amazing transition again. I encourage you to try a few more settings. If you find something interesting, please share it in the comments. Let's look at one more detail of this computational life reactor. You can zoom into the soup and pick 2 tapes of your choice. In the sampler you can investigate the replication of the RNA molecule step by step and witness the copying process. The mechanism is not complicated at all. Usually there are 2 bracket genes which make the program loop forever. Each time inside the loop, the arrows move 1 step in opposite directions, and then there is a dot or a comma that copies the numbers from one arrow to the other. Also importantly, since the 2 tapes are read and written in opposite directions, the program needs to be palindromic. It has to read the same left to right as right to left, at least as far as the operational genes are concerned. And notice, there was no selection here. Complete chance created these self-copying sequences. But once they were there, they took over. Selection kicks in when there are different types of self-replicating patterns in the same soup. They start fighting for resources, and the pattern with the better copying mechanism will eventually dominate. That's the whole point of the experiment. Out of nothing but noise, we got two things life needs: something that can copy itself and order. None of this messes with the second law of thermodynamics. You only get order out of chaos as long as energy keeps flowing into the soup. Order parameters are used to describe phase transitions. There is a very neat way to describe the order in our soup. We just look at how much storage the soup needs. When we are at the stage of complete chaos, randomness, or white noise, there are no patterns among the bytes of our RNA tapes. Therefore, we roughly need 60 bytes for each of the 4000 tapes, which works out to 240 kilobytes of data to store the content of the soup faithfully. On the other end of the phase transition, when the same pattern occurs all over the tapes, the soup compresses beautifully, and we need much less space to store its content. The following plot shows the file size of our soup as a function of time, and you can clearly observe the sharp transition from chaos to order around the epoch 8600. You might object that some of the copying programs we found run forever. Something else has to come along and stop it, and you'd be right. But it doesn't matter where the copying process gets interrupted. As long as one full copy has been made, the result is the same. There's a famous problem lurking in here. For some tapes, we have to explicitly stop the execution after a certain number of steps. In the Computational Life Reactor, you can choose this cutoff manually and decide the largest possible number of steps for the Turing machine. And there's no clever way around it. You cannot look at a tape and decide whether it will ever stop. That is the halting problem. And it's not a question of being smart enough. It can't be done in general. So there's no shortcut. The only way to find out what a random tape does is to run it and to watch, which is exactly what we just did and probably also what nature did and still does. I have to confess that I'm not a biologist at all, and I hope I haven't stretched the analogy with abiogenesis too far. Go ahead and leave your critiques in the comments. That's all for today. I hope to see you again. Bye bye.